Hello, everyone. We are ready for another CCO Live or Live with CCO. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight because we're going to go back to the basics and we're going to take some time to explain how our courses work, how we integrate the BAT system and the Blitz and the BAT technique into the courses. So hang your questions out until the very end and we'll answer them then. But usually, our live with CCOs are casual and fun and so on. And we're going to do that tonight. But we've been really wanting to tell people a little bit of insight about how our courses work, why people are gravitated to them, why people gravitate to them. And I think it's because of the being able to use our courses and our techniques with all types of learning systems or learning types. So hold on and we're going to get started. And again, save your questions till the end. You can still talk and make comments on the stream if you want. We can see those, but I'll actually stop and answer questions there at the end. Let's see here. Did not want to advance. Oh. The CCO experience is very unique, and we get a lot of feedback from our students, both the students that are in the course as well as past students, about what they experienced in the course that helped them. Using that feedback through the years, we've developed a teaching style that we feel works for everybody. So what we want to talk about now is how to actually navigate through the course, through the Blitz that we have that goes with the course, as well as how to integrate the BAT technique to learn efficiently. Now, this is going to work with all of our courses, and we want you to know that not only are you able to work within your own time frame, but your coaches are there to help you along the way, and you can also talk to other students in the forums. The first thing we want to know is the books that you're going to be using. We have verbiage that we use that you may have never heard before. So let's explain the difference between a textbook, a workbook, and a manual, and the different manuals that are involved with the courses. The first thing, textbooks and workbooks. Almost all of our courses have a textbook and a workbook. Not all of them will have a workbook, but almost or all of them will have a textbook that's associated with the course. Sometimes it'll be a paper book, and sometimes it'll be available via an e-copy or an electronic copy. You can choose to use whichever one you want or feel more comfortable with if both are available to you. Now, these are books that are going to help you work through the course. This is where you're going to find the answers to some of the questions that are in the quizzes for the chapters. However, it's very important to mention that being a coder or getting a specific certification in this arena, you need to learn to research. So if you're not seeing the answer in the question, the course question, and you reach out to your coach, you're not finding it, think about how you would look or do research if you couldn't find something on the job. You're going to go out and look on the internet, right? So use all of your resources to find the answers to the questions, okay? They are not going to be word for word like they may have been in other courses that you've taken throughout your educational career. I remember that when I was in high school, that there was a particular course where all the quiz questions and stuff were word for word sentences, and all you had to do is find that sentence in the textbook, and then there was a missing word and you just filled it in. It was so easy. Thus, I never studied. I just knew that I could flip through some pages, and I really didn't learn that much because it was mainly filling in the blank and copying from the textbook. I didn't even read the textbook. I just scanned it. Well, your courses are not going to be that way. You need to learn to research. You need to use resources, and you need to reach out to your coaches, and you'll be able to also reach out in the forums with other students. Even if they're not at the same chapter you are, they will have most likely had the same questions that you had. The textbook and the workbook are what you are going to work through the course. The questions at the end of each chapter will be based on what you're learning from the textbook. And then the workbook will just be there for integrating practice. These two books, textbook and workbook, are not allowed in the exam. Now, I mean the exam when you sit for your certification. When you're taking the practice exams and you're taking the quizzes that go along with the course, yes, you use your resources on those, all right? So when we say book, we mean a textbook or a workbook. So that's the verbiage that we think of when we use for textbook and workbook. However, you're being tested, and the textbook and workbook are based on the code sets, which are called manuals. Now, there are several manuals. There is an ICD-10 CM manual, and that's for diagnosis codes. That is anything that's wrong with the patient. There's also, depending on which courses you're taking, will depend on which one of these or if all of these manuals are applicable to your course. So you have the ICD-10 CM manual, which is for diagnosis coding, whatever's wrong with the patient. Then you have ICD-10 PCS, which is an inpatient code set only. It's only used for inpatient coding, and it's procedures. So thus PCS means procedural coding system. The CPT manual is also a procedure manual, what the providers are doing to the patient. This is different than ICD-10 PCS, as it is the outpatient code set for procedures. And then there's an additional code set called the HCPCS, HCPS, and that is somewhat of an ancillary code set that's primarily used in Medicare patients. For the CPC exam, or an outpatient credentialing exam, you're going to need the ICD-10 CM manual, you're going to need the CPT manual, and you're going to need the HCPCS manual. So that's 3 manuals for the CPC exam. Now, I'm not going to go through and explain all the manuals that you need for each credential, because that's in your course and also in your welcome, and it'll tell you which manual you need to set for that credential, to study for those credentials. Everything is based on the guidelines within the code sets or the manuals. Now, we get a lot of questions about the guidelines. What are these guidelines? And we often hear people say, wait, what do you mean guidelines? Well, it's a new term. It's not a term that's used in the medical field or any other type of learning that I can think of, but it's a very heavy-weighted term in the coding arena or anything that has to do with coding and billing, compliance, auditing, the whole 9 yards. Everything is based on the guidelines. The guidelines are what tell you how to use the code set. What the code set is a translation of medical terminology, both diagnosis, all the diagnoses that are available, all of the procedures or things that you can do to a patient, and then the HCPCS ends up picking up things like wheelchairs, things that you need to provide for the patient, as well as a lot of medications, and that is used for Medicare patients. So the guidelines tell you how to translate all of this documentation into a code set, which is a code. Think of when you were growing up and you and your friends got together and made a secret code so you could talk to each other. That's kind of what this is. We are turning the verbiage in the medical field into a code of numeric and alphanumeric codes that translates, because we can't say that we did a cholecystectomy open on a patient that had complications, and that the patient was diabetic, and all of this stuff would take paragraphs, and we can say that with like 2 codes, 3 codes, and therefore that's what we're doing. We're translating. So as coders, we interpret what the patient is having done and is wrong with them based on the documentation that the provider has given into a code set, so that it can be captured for statistical purposes. And then on top of that, it just happens to be a convenient way to get paid, right? And therefore, everything works smoothly. The providers don't learn how to translate code sets. We do. However, they're asked now, because of the electronic medical records, to pick the codes, and they aren't ever trained to do that. They rely on you as the coder to be the expert and to be able to help them translate into a code set based on the guidelines. Now, you may have heard me or other people say, if you can look up a telephone number in a telephone book, which again, we don't really use telephone books like we used to, or you can look up a word in a dictionary, you can look up a code in the manual, because it's predominantly the same thing. You have an index, and then you have the body, which we, for our manuals, call it, like for ICD, the tabular, that has the description in it. So again, you don't really have to have much training to be able to do that. However, there's guidelines associated with there's rules. So think of rules, regulations, and things that are associated with this code set. That's what you're tested on. And again, providers are not trained how to use a code set, how to, let alone the guidelines. This is what it looks like in your manuals, the guidelines, when you first get to them. Usually they're always found in the beginning of your manuals. And these are the areas that you will be tested on when you take your certification exam. Everything will be on the guidelines. And the guidelines, how to follow them, which you'll learn how to do this in your courses, is based like an outline. So you'll notice this page or the slide is showing you the header, then you have A, and then you have a number, and then when you go into this is kind of a directory of the guidelines. As you flip the pages, it'll follow the system of a guideline. So if you are used to, an outline is what I meant to say. So if you have ever worked with outlines before, this will be very easy for you to follow. So when someone says, know the guidelines, again, we usually tell you, we want you to read through the guidelines in each manual, predominantly the CPT and the ICD manual, at least 3 times before you get to test. Ideally, that's what you need to know. You're going to learn how to make notes and annotations in your guidelines. And for the CPT manual, we're going to show you how to use the BAT technique to get your CPT manual ready for testing. And that portion of the manual, again, you refer back to the guidelines, and you'll be putting any little notes that you need to explain the rules that go along with the codes. I'm going to give you a quick guideline just to give you an idea of what to expect. when you get into this area of your courses. There is a guideline that states if the provider has not documented whether the patient has type 1 or type 2 diabetes, then you default to type 2 diabetes. That's a guideline. So in other words, they're saying, there's two particular main codes for just basic diabetes, but there's two types of basic mainstream diabetes: type 1, which is insulin dependent, and type 2 diabetes. And that's what majority of people have. It used to be known as late onset diabetes. Type 1 was juvenile diabetes. Maybe you heard it like that. Because like 98% of all diabetics are type 2, then the guidelines state you're going to default to type 2 if the provider fails to document what type of diabetes the patient has. That's a guideline, right? So you get a little bit of an understanding of what we mean by the guidelines. They are located at the front of your manuals, and they will be also integrated often throughout the manuals close to the particular codes. So when you go to look at ICD-10, the diabetic codes that I just mentioned in that example of a guideline, type 2 diabetes with no other complications and being unspecified is E11.9. And type 1 diabetes is E10.9. So when you get to that first section of the E10 codes and the E11, the guideline that I just mentioned, it will be at the front, but it'll also be a little sentence, a little blurb that says, oh, by the way, don't forget that if there is not documentation as to the type of diabetes, you're going to default to E11.9 because that's type 2 diabetes, etc., etc. So you don't have to have the guidelines memorized. It's too much to memorize. But actually, after you've worked with them for a while, you can't help but get them stuck in your brain. And the guidelines are actually based on the disease process, as well as the guidelines for ICD-10 and CPT. It just makes sense. I'm going to give you one more example for a CPT guideline, because I want you to kind of get this understanding in your head that there is a guideline in CPT, which is the procedures that we perform on the patients, that if you do a removal of a lesion, say right here on the hand or the wrist, and the repair of the lesion is more complicated than removal of the lesion, then that code for the repair goes first in the sequencing of the codes because it took more work, and it's going to get payout more too, but it took more work. So therefore, that code is going to go before the code of removing. It's not based on what is done first. It's based on the complexity of the procedure. So it's pretty easy just to whack off a lesion, right? But it could be very complicated for the provider to then repair the hole that they made by whacking off that lesion, especially if it's in a particularly delicate area. Maybe say they're removing a basal cell carcinoma right here between the nose and the cheek and the lip. Well, you can't leave a big hole there, so they're going to use like a flap technique, and it's kind of like doing a plastic surgery. And again, this is much more delicate and complicated doing the repair than just, cutting off that lesion. That's a guideline. And those are the things that you'll learn when you read the guidelines. And this is exactly what you'll be tested on when you get ready to take your certification exam. So now I hope you have a better understanding of what the guidelines are and where you can find them. And they're very intimidating, especially if you don't have a larger medical background, because some of those things may not fall into place or make sense to you yet, but it will. It will once you start going through the course. Don't get intimidated by it. If you struggle with anything, reach out to your coach and they will help you. And I like to tell little stories along the way. That's how things stick better in my head. And a lot of the coaches end up doing that as well. Now that we understand the different types of textbook, workbook, manuals, the guidelines that you're going to be tested on, really that's all what it's all about. Let's talk about how the CCO courses are put together. One of the things that I love so much that CCO does is you really get to take control of how you want to progress through the course. Now, we'll have students that call and talk to their coach, and, especially if this is a second career for you and you don't have an experience in the medical background, like I mentioned before, you could be a little intimidated when you get into some of this verbiage that you're not familiar with. And then you open up all those books and manuals that you get, and you've invested a lot of money into all of this, and then you're sitting in front of your computer and you're looking at the course and you're thinking, oh no, I'm feeling lost. What do I need to do? Well, the first thing you need to know is that you, again, are in control, and you can adapt the courses to your own learning style. This is not a rigid course. However, if there is no guidance, then you tend to flounder. And we are here to help you along the way, kind of coach you along the process. We're not going to hold your hand, and give you the answers to all the questions, because we want you to research and learn. But we also want to give you the freedom to be able to say, this is my learning style. I'm an audio visual type person, or I have to take notes, or, no, I've got to read, and that's the way I learn. And that's fine. So you can adapt with the course that way. Okay, starting at the beginning, how long should it take you to get through one of the basic courses that we have? On an average, all the courses are 3 to 4 months. I really don't think that you should ever think that it would take less than that. We have had it happen before, but those people were not working. They weren't caregivers and have children, and they were extremely driven. And I think the two people that did that in the decade that I've been working with CCO, again, they had advanced degrees, and so give yourself a little leeway there and say, you know what? Average 4 months. Okay, I'm going to give myself 4 to 6 months before I test, and I want to get through the course. That is 3 to 4 months average, but give yourself 4 to 6 months, so that if you do better than 6 or 5 months, you get into 4, then you're doing great. Also, there usually is a little area that you kind of hit a brick wall with these courses. Even if you're in the medical field, you get to going in the beginning, it's, kind of the behind the scenes, the business of medicine, and some of this stuff you just kind of know because you've been on this planet long enough. You understand what a fever is and so on, and and the basic cold and a flu and things like that. When you get into the meaty stuff, then you kind of hit that wall and you get intimidated and you're thinking, what have I signed up for? Just know that that's coming, and then reach out for support when you get to that point. Because once you get over that little bit of a hump in the course, you'll start flying much faster after you get in to the next section, which tends to be body system orientated. All right. The full courses that we have, now it's 3 to 4 months, but kind of give yourself 4 to 6 months before you plan to test. The next thing that we have that I think is a real bonus with our courses, when you take a full course with us, you get our review blitzes. And what the review blitz does is it allows you to refine, refresh, and review all the existing knowledge that you just went through in the course. The Blitz, if you've already had a course before, and we get a lot of people that have taken other courses or gone to a brick and mortar school, but and tested and realized, hey, I wasn't ready to test, or they gave me all this great knowledge, but it was more of like business type, not how to actually code and work with the code sets. And that's what the certification exams are over, the code sets, those guidelines. So you may be a student that just needs that review Blitz, which specifically goes over the guidelines. We created those to be able to say, okay, we're going to break down the guidelines and really highlight on the particular areas of the guidelines that we know that you're going to be tested on and that we know people struggle with. So we're going to tell you how to find the information in your manuals. You don't have to have this stuff memorized because it changes and tweaks every year. However, you need to know where to find it and find it quickly. And that's where the BAT method comes in, the bubble, highlight, annotate technique that Laureen created in the 90s. And this was a direct result of her having to sit for the coding exams without having any experience in this arena at all. Again, she did that in the 90s, and it has been so successful for students that are testing that it kind of blossomed and morphed since the beginning into something that's invaluable to have. You need to, even if you're not getting ready to test for another credential, I go and do the BAT technique on my CPT manual just for working. You're going to want to have that with you, that ability to do that in the future. So 1 to 2 months on average to get through that. Then you're going to want to wrap up with practice exams. Give yourself about 2 weeks to really focus on practice exams. Now, we encourage you to take timed practice exams, but if we say the CPC exam or a regular core coding credential exam, that's going to be 150 questions and almost a 6-hour exam. You don't have time to be practicing a 6-hour exam in a day. So our timed practice exams are broken down into 60, 50, or 60 questions, and that's a lot more manageable. Now, CCO has practice exams free for several of our of the credentials that are out there, and then we also have paid practice exams. They're all timed. You want to use those, but you also want to look for other practice exams and keep taking them until you're getting an 85% or better on your practice exams. Then you know you're golden, you're ready to go set for the credential. Why do we tell you that? Well, first of all, from experience, but 85% is with our exams, you're really scoring high. Our practice exams, we've been told again and again through the years, are much more difficult than the actual exams that you're giving by the AAPC or by AHIMA. We spend a lot of time really working on making sure we're covering the guidelines. And when you take our courses and you take the practice exams associated with the courses, we want to give you really meaty rationales. And I kind of think that's what we're known for, is those really fabulous rationales. We want you to know if A is the answer, then why is B, C, and D not the answer? And we really kind of unpack the scenario. Why were you why you were given this particular question? Because it's associated to this particular guideline. And you have to know it because you're going to face this in the real world, not just in a testing scenario. 85% or better really pads you to get a very good score on the, say, the CPC exam, or both the AAPC and HEMA's credentials, and anybody else that's a credentialing body. Once you do that, then the last step is to actually take the practice or take the exam. You want to schedule an exam and then pass that credential. Now, whoever you're testing with would say whether you're taking a test online or whether you're taking it being proctored. If you need help with that, we have other training, and your coach can help you on setting that up. We've done several training videos on how to go out and schedule your exam for your area and what to look for. But we'll go into, we won't go into more detail regarding that because we've covered it before. If you want to get more information about how to go through this process, we did an additional video, a short video about our CCO's proven process. And you can see the link here to go find that. That's at cco.us/CCO-proven-process. And it kind of walks you through this particular slide of taking a course someplace, hopefully with us, but making sure you have a course, going through the review blitz that really hones in on those guidelines, taking the practice exams, making sure you're getting 85% or better, and then scheduling and taking the credential exam. How do we have you go through our courses? Now, we can't speak for other courses, so again, this is the CCO courses, and we're going to use the basic coding as an example, but this works with all of our courses that we offer, all the credentialed ones. We have 3 main ways to get through the course. And again, the great thing is you get to pick which works for you. You can even switch it up, start out one way and go to another, but you know the way you learn better than anybody else. So we shouldn't tell you, this is what we want you to do. No, we tell you, this is what you have laid out in front of you. This is what you're going to learn in each section, what we want you to learn. Now, what is going to work best for your learning style? The first one we call synchronized chapter method. The second is a course first method. And the third is the BAT first method. We've had students go through all 3 of these. And some of the course instructors and coaches, they prefer one method over another for themselves. But actually what happens with our students is, you know, once you get a feel for them and we've talked to them and we've been corresponding back and forth with them via the platform that we use, we get a feel for, you know, do they have any medical training? Do they have a particular interest? Maybe they don't have a very prolific background on online education. Maybe they struggle with a certain area and they've taken a course before, and that we know that because they've let us know. And so we could suggest, you know what, I think you need to go with this method, and that it's going to benefit you the most. But for the most part, 3 ways you can get through the course, and let's talk about them now. The first one, the synchronized method. What we have you do is we have you do the Blitz, and that is looking at the videos on specific guidelines, and then doing the BAT technique, say to the CPT manual. At the same time, you're going through the chapters. Okay, so if you go to the CPT surgery section, you're going to watch the video, and you're going to do the textbook and the workbook after you watch the video. I always tell people, watch the video first and have a notebook and just write down little notes for yourself. If there's a word that you've not heard before, or a term, a procedure, then you can just jot a little note. You can even write down the timestamp, because the videos are time-stamped. You can stop the recording, make yourself a little note, and start it back up. And this is really convenient also if you get interrupted. Say you get a phone call, or you realize you need to run out the door, or one of the children needs your attention. Again, it's so easy to just stop your video and come back to where you left off. So you watch that particular section, and let's say you're in the cardiology section. While you're doing that chapter, you're also going to watch that particular chapter in the Blitz videos. So the course has videos associated to each chapter, and the Blitz has videos that are on the guidelines that go over each section. So again, it's a fine-tuned look at the guidelines themselves. So all of the codes, all of the guidelines surrounding cardiology are right there in one little section, and you'll go ahead and watch that right after you've done the video and the textbook and the workbook. And then you'll go to the BAT technique, and you'll open up your CPT manual, and you'll go to the cardiology section in your manual, and you'll work through the BAT technique, bubble, highlighting, annotating, all of that particular area of the manual. Okay. Now, another example, I said radiology. No, excuse me, I said cardiology, or the surgery section. You could do that in radiology as well. So you're going to watch the radiology video for the course. You're going to read the textbook. You're going to work through the workbook. You're going to take the chapter exam. Then you're going to go through and watch the video for the Blitz. And then you're going to open up the radiology section of the manual, and you're going to do your bubble and highlighting technique through that area, that particular section. So that's synchronized. You're doing everything for every chapter together at the same time. So you're in the surgery section, you're in radiology, then you do, cardiology, and then you're in respiratory, then you're in genitourinary. And again, it's just one section at a time and focused in a synchronized manner. The second method is to take the course first. So that means that you would do the textbook and the workbook. You would go through all of the videos of the course, and with each quiz, before you take the quiz, you watch the video, then you read the chapter, you look at your notes, you do the textbook, you do the workbook, and then you take the quiz, and then you go through the whole course until you've finished the entire course. Then you go back to the beginning and you pull out the blitzes, and then you do each one of those videos, one right after the other. You've already done the whole course. Now you're fine-tuning all of that knowledge that you learned in the course. Okay? And you're saying, okay, yes, I remember I studied that particular guideline. Okay, this is the way they're going to ask that question. This is what they want to know, I know. Then after you go through all the blitz, then you're going to do the BAT technique to the manual, to the CPT manual, and make your annotations in your ICD manual. So you do the course first, get through the video, read the chapter, do the textbook workbook, and then take the quiz. Then you do the Blitz videos, and then you do the BAT technique. So complete the entire course, and then go through each section one by one with the Blitz, and then, like we said, rinse and repeat with the CPT manual. If you do not have a medical background, I suggest you do it this way. This is the my preferred way when talking to a student that's a second career person, and especially if they have a busy life, because you're just focused on one thing at a time. Okay. And then the third is you're going to do the BAT technique first to the manuals. Now, I have to tell you that Laureen prefers this particular method. And I think it's because she created the BAT technique. No, that's not true. She did, but so what you're doing is you are going to prepare your manuals, because the manuals are what you're being tested on. They're what you're taking into the exam itself, right? So it's very important to get really upfront and knowledgeable and intimate with those manuals. The better you know your manuals, the faster and more accurate you will be on the exam. And that's important because it's timed. And some of the exam questions, the little areas are, you either know it or you don't. So if they're doing like terminology, it's all multiple choice for, say, the CPC exam, for example. And, so again, you either know what a cholecystectomy is or you don't. And so you're going to do that area. But when you get into those case studies, they take up time. You have to do everything. You have to do 150 questions in about 2 minutes each. And that can be very, very difficult. Our Blitz and they give you testing tips as well. So you would go through the BAT technique, get your CPT manual in shape. Now you're going to look through this manual and you're going to be intimidated because it's not going to make any sense to you, right? But remember in the beginning, I told you we want you to read the guidelines in the manual at least 3 times each. And a lot of times I'll tell people, I said, read before you even start the course, read the guidelines. Now you're not going to make any hide or hair of them. They're going to be, very intimidating. However, you in the middle of the course, you go through the guidelines, just take a break and read them. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember we talked about this. And then you read them again at the end and they're like, okay, I got it. Well, this would be an efficient way to do that. So do the BAT technique. You're going to take your CPT manual, you're going to bubble, highlight, and annotate it because it's a technique. It's we don't tell you what to put everywhere. We teach you how to get that manual into shape so that codes leap up off the page at you or are divided up in sections so you're not in the wrong area. Then we tell you to do the CPT course, do the videos, read the chapter in the textbook, take the chapter exams, and then watch the Blitz videos, which allow you to really focus on the guidelines per chapter that we know you're going to be tested on. Okay. And or you could do the BAT technique method next to the CPT manual, right? Watch the next CPT course video, read the textbook, et cetera, and then after you've completed the course, do the Blitz. Right? 3 ways that you can get through the course. You could start out one way and then completely switch. Maybe you really, really struggle with cardiology. I mentioned it's very intimidating, and it is an area that has a lot of verbiage that's new to people, even if you've been in the medical field. And verbiage and lingo is extremely important, and the anatomy is very important on this chapter. So again, you may say, you know what, I was going to go, do everything, go through the whole course, then stop, then do the next section and then the next section. But I think I need to pull out that Blitz and watch the videos for that particular chapter because I'm struggling, and do them like synchronized instead. So again, it's up to you. Your learning style is what's going to allow you to pick which method you want to go with. Now, remember, again, it's up to you. We'll guide you. We'll make recommendations. However, they're only recommendations. You could say, you know what? I don't even want to do it that way. You said cardiology was hard, and I feel like just jumping in. I'm going to just start with the cardiology chapter. Now, I would suggest that you don't do that. However, Maybe you are a person that is been a clinician, or you've been in the medical field, and you say, you know what, I worked in this particular area, and I'm going to take that chapter and do that one first because I want to see if I remember anything. That's fine. Switch them up, do what works for you. We don't, I mentioned that I like the one way to do it. Laureen likes another. Some of the other coaches may say, oh, it can get too hectic. You can get too confused if you start jumping around. And we can suggest, because we've been talking to you and we get a feel for maybe what will work best for you. And honestly, all of us have been doing this for a long time. So you'd be really hard pressed to ask us a question that we haven't already been asked before. And we know that if you tell us you're getting ready to start chapter 5, we can almost start thinking of the questions you're going to have, right? We've just been doing this a long time. But that's okay, because you can even adapt these to whatever method works best for you. I keep mentioning that if you have a medical background, if you were a clinician, or maybe you worked in a pharmacy, maybe you worked in a skilled facility, and some of the verbiage is still, pretty fresh for you, or maybe it's been a long time since you've worked in the medical field and you've done other things, but now you're coming back to this as a career choice. Again, you can look at it and see what we recommend and then move forward. I can tell you that there's pros and cons to having a medical background or starting fresh, not knowing anything about this particular field of medicine. Clinicians and people with medical backgrounds tend to overthink the questions, and they're pretty straightforward. And so keep that in mind. Don't overthink it. That, again, is the number one thing I usually tell people if I find out that they've had any type of medical background in the past, that you're probably going to overthink the questions. So when you ask me and you tell me and you type out all this information of why you think that's the correct answer that you picked versus what you were told the right answer was, and then I come back and say, remember when we talked before and I told you you're overthinking it? You're overthinking it. This is why. And it's, oh, okay, yes, I remember. So again, know that we're going to be here every step of the way. We're not going to hold your hand, though. Okay. Online learning is difficult for some people, but the fact is now, I couldn't have said this a few years ago, is that's the way of life. You're going to be hard pressed to find a career in the medical field now that doesn't have an intricate part of it being online, whether it be remote communication with other people, even if you're working in a facility together, right? You're going to be sending messages and emails and stuff back and forth. So taking an online course, that'll benefit you with that ability to communicate that way. And more are coders and our auditors and such, they're going remote. That also means that taking an online course is beneficial. If you've already taken a course and you're coming to us to fine tune and help you get over the hump so that you can test, again, you'll find that there'll still be areas that we cover that you're going to struggle with. However, you're going to go through these chapters a little faster because you've already been exposed to a little bit of the training. We intend to always make learning fun, enjoyable. We're very passionate about what we do as educators because we love this area of medicine. Everybody at CCO has an extensive background, and we've been able to find this niche in educating others that we enjoy. We hope that our passion is something that kind of goes through osmosis to you, and that it feeds you and makes you want to continue to learn after you've passed your exam. Once you get certified, the learning never stops. We want you to get other certifications if you choose to, but you'll always need to get CEUs, and we will be here to help you with that because you already know how we teach. We once we have you, we don't ever want to let you go. You're under the CCO umbrella, you're under our wing, and we in turn learn from you. So, it's just this is a career that you will have a lifetime of learning. And we always stay connected. There's no other education that I've ever worked with, being an instructor at colleges and stuff like that they always said, don't get too attached or familiar with your students because they're your students. But in this arena, the students become your peers. And so I've kept ongoing communication with a lot of my former students, and we will see each other at conferences, and we will see each other watching webinars together, getting CEUs, and discussing on different platforms events as they change. And this past year has been pretty prolific with that. You'll always learn, and we want you to come learn with us. And we like to say learning is fun. So come to cco.us and kind of share the passion that we have for what we do. Thank you. Now let's ask questions. Let me look here and see if there's any questions. Elaine says, I have taken them already. Now I'm trying to get ready for the exam before I go to take the AAPC practice exams. Good. I guess you mentioned probably that we have free practice exams. We have free and paid. Let's see. Lori says, I like method 3 because you learn your manual better before beginning. And, she's Lori's getting ready to take the inpatient credential, I think, too, but she's been studying, and that worked for her with her CPC. Catherine says, hello, everyone. I'm a newbie, also the full course. Yay, Catherine. Good, good. Let's see. Oh, Jennifer had said, and I saw it pop up, hang out with us one time, and this really is what we chat about in our free time. You're so right. Yeah, Jennifer is one of our instructors, as you may or may not know. But yeah, we always tend to, it's just the way it integrates into your life. But, the medical field is in our life, especially as we age, but your children get sick. So-and-so knows somebody that, got this or that. And you'll have people that ask you questions because they think you know everything. Well, we do. We read a lot of charts, and you understand your knowledge base grows. You know what medicine's used for specific stuff, and you get to read all the documentation that the providers give. So yeah, you're just enough to be dangerous, my husband says. And let's see. Yeah, excitement will turn into a passion. It's rather addictive, but I think it's also addictive because it's people, we enjoy it, right? If we were all fuddy-duddies and drone on and on and on, then you might not get as addicted as we do. It's never boring. Yeah, Jennifer said, my kids used to think I was a doctor. My kids do the same thing because I'll be watching open heart surgery or somebody having their toe amputated, or I'm looking at a diabetic ulcer on a leg, and they're debriding it. And there's like, why are you watching this? Like, well, I have to understand how the procedure's done because I'm reading it. And if I'm a very visual person, so if I see it, then I'm more inclined to be able to follow along the documentation. And if something's missed, and now I know how they stitch in layers, or, so again, Stacy says, yes. And when I get a bill, I examine it, looking for the codes that they use. Oh, Stacy, we've all done that. And you may have heard me talk about the last time I did that was for my son. He has epilepsy, and he's intractable. And the doctor failed to put the diagnosis code that was intractable because it's a very long description. It's like almost a paragraph, the type of epilepsy he has. There's like 4 kinds. that are in that little window that you would, kind of bubble. But when they don't pay attention to the codes, they just pick it comes up on the encoder, right? And they read and it's like, yep, that's it. But at the very end of the sentence of the description is where it says intractable or non-intractable. And I looked at it and I said, oh, he picked the wrong code. And so his assistant, who's a nurse practitioner, said, really? And I said, yeah, they picked the intractable code. And we specifically talked about, that's why he's on this other medication. It's, and so on and so forth. And so she went and told him and she changed it, which, you think, would that have made a difference? If the billing, it wouldn't have made a difference, but in the long run, it would have made a difference because intractable means medicine doesn't work very well for him. And so he needs additional care and stuff. So it would have made a difference. Yeah. And I've known people that picked the wrong code, the wrong CPT code, and got billed more. That's happened more than one. That can save you $500, $1,000. Mm-hmm. Yep. Lori watches medical shows and you want to code it, or you hear, or enough, and you look and you say, they said that word wrong, or they wouldn't do that, and so that's kind of fun too. You guys, it has been a lot of fun talking with you. I hope this is helpful. And, the reason we did this is we get asked these questions a lot. And we wanted to be able to put that out there, show people how we suggest you do it. A lot of people want structure. And so, again, this allows us to say, well, you can have structure, but the fact is you have more than one way you can do this. And instead of us telling you every time we meet with a new student, hey, look, these are the way we suggest you do it, and you get to pick. You get to lead the way. All right, guys, you can go to cco.us/notify. Thank you, guys. See you in the forums. Don't forget to like and let other people know about CCO if we've been helpful to you. We share the passion. Bye, guys.